you very much. Hello, everyone, and welcome to newcomers from me too. And I loved the last workshop. It was wonderful to be in dialogue with so many people doing amazing things. And the word that I was left with afterwards was beautiful. Several people used it about my book, which is nice, and also about the workshop in general. I've written about it, and I think it's a word worth reflecting on. So that's what I'm going to do today. So this is my thought for the day, a reference to a daily Radio 4 slot on the concept of the beautiful. So between the last workshop and this one, my book has come out. So, you can't see it in this. There it is. Maybe if I put it in front of my face. Anyway, it's real. It's come out. It's now a real thing in the world. And I'm finding the process of being read and talked back to exciting and connecting, if that word makes sense. Maybe it's building me a between. Last time I read a short section from the beginning about the tragic distance between how the criminal justice system sees and what it feels like to be a troubled human being caught up in criminal justice. I talked about the difference between mute and resonant prison environments and between I-it and I-thou orientations, suggesting that these differences impact on our growth and aliveness. They impact directly on levels of suicide and violence. An I-it orientation approaches others as experienced objects. An I-thou orientation treats people as experiencing subjects, as whole and unfolding. And prisoners describe these differences as the desert, a sort of famine of the soul, versus an oasis. The oasis is where the wire to the world begins to vibrate. This time, I want to start by reading a short section from the end of the book, from the epilogue, in which I describe feeling poised between hope and despair. One of the stories I tell is in the book is of my return to a long-term high security prison that had once been reasonably humane. I was asked to go back because it was newly violent and thought to be producing extremism. It was only when I returned after a 10-year gap that I could see so clearly what had been there before but was now lost. I call the two studies Whitemore 1 and Whitemore 2. In a masterful stroke by the universe, the American reader I refer to in the book is with us today. So this is a part of my epilogue. An American reader of this manuscript in draft form observed that at Whitemore 2, you're describing the death of something beautiful. It's hard to call any kind of prison beautiful, but he put his finger on something important. What died, except in exceptional places, was a language of humanity and professionalism. Humanity meant full observation of a thick or full, rather than narrowly legal, concept of personhood. It required prisoners to be regarded as possessors of emergent capacities and strengths and futures. Newly narrow, urgent priorities squeezed out thinking about the meaning of these kinds of concepts in practice. Even the concept of security was carefully considered or thickened as dynamic security in those early days. Austerity in practice involved something more than fiscal. It brought with it a spiritual kind of selfishness, a withdrawal of any kind of charity, my American commentator observed. It coincided with harshening political attitudes towards justice and punishment. The state was blotting people out, as Iris Murdoch put it. This prisoner from Whitemore 1 explained what humanity looked like. The best officers are cons in uniform. I say, so the relationship is between two human beings at the level of human essence rather than in role? Prisoner says, yeah, being humans together, honest and real. I've tried to articulate what goes on in prisons where humanity lives as an idea, even whilst it's been declining in practice, and what happens where it doesn't. Without humanity, a person lives in the dominion of death. In the interests of the life force, we need to treat others and be treated as human. This means being seen as capable of authenticity, agency, feelings, including suffering, and growth, as worthy of kindness and respect. It means being observant and supportive of emergent personhood in all situations. The thing of beauty was the sheer effort being made to think about, defend against incursions, and where possible, practice morally intelligible forms of imprisonment, prisons that were good enough for the majority of prisoners to survive and develop in as persons. This I-thou effort, as I might call it now, it was not widely translated into practice, but it was much more in evidence now, was personified in the many powerful as well as understated characters with an unwavering framework of ethics who were once attracted into the prison service to serve lengthy careers there. Their numbers have fallen, or their voices have been silenced, some have burned out, and others have retired or moved to the private sector in despair of ever achieving their goals in the public sector. Some of those who remain are, I'm told, struggling existentially. The difference between the beautiful time, if I can use that shorthand, and the I-it time was heartbreaking. It eventually led me to take time out and write this book. I spent a lot of time searching for and trying to understand what the something beautiful was. Did it still exist? Can we grow it back? I found another pair of high security prisons, each of which resembled the two conditions, I-it and I-thou. In the book, I go on to say, they're almost archetypes, two forms of penal order, but also, according to psychotherapist Erik Erikson, the two extreme poles of human endeavour, the moral grammar of our existence, a kind of battle between the forces of humanity and the forces of inhumanity. In I-thou relations, staff see prisoners justly, appreciate their wholeness, and support them in developing their capacities. Everyone in the prison contributes in ways that are valued by others. Some of this is practical, but it's also about ways of seeing. So staff in these outstanding prisons have a different metaphysics, philosophy of life, people, and punishment from staff in I-it prisons. They imagined prisoners differently. Their intentionality or attitude was different. They grasped that prisoners were agents entitled to make moral claims. This created a distinct kind of force field or landscape of expectation, allowing prisoners to present as well as become fuller versions of who they were. Prison staff constituted and created this environment alongside prisoner peers. The key ingredients were expertise, presence, respect, and having growth intentions. So the kind of presence I'm describing is co-presence. We bring another into being by connecting to what is alive in them. The outcomes were different. So the something beautiful is a kind of between. This is a significant and real dimension of human life. It's a mutual space or moment of genuine mutual contact between people. It's a resonant place where something is transmitted between two human souls. In this between lurks the vital, nourishing experience of human life. When we're in it, we vibrate, we grow and change. Something new emerges. We find a foothold for transformation. We discover the truth of human existence in all its concrete complexity. It's experienced as a form of connection between the self and the world, a crucially important dimension in human existence. George Eliot argued that in these moments we experience something of the fundamental, a vital feeling of connection and reciprocity, the breath of the world. So much goes on in the between. No wonder we describe it as beautiful. The beautiful thing is still out there, but it's getting harder to find, and we seem to have stopped trying to build it. The week after I finished my book, I took my students to Rye Hill Prison. I know the people in it very well, and I've watched it becoming more and more resonant as a morally gifted senior management team invest in their staff, the staff invest in prisoners, and the prisoners invest in their time in the prison. One of my students wrote to me the day after the visit. He said, "I came out of that prison a different man." He was so moved by the ordinary human connection, potential, and energy going on around him that it changed his views about life and punishment. The ordinary is often the place where extraordinary things can happen. So since the last workshop, I've been reading books on beauty, and this may not show either. This is my favourite. This is by Elaine Scarry, and it's called On Beauty and Being Just. Interestingly, her first major book, written 15 years earlier, was about pain. Something eventually leads us from pain to beauty. She describes something beautiful as a call. It decenters us. It exerts corrective pressure against disregard. It alters our consciousness and makes us want to be stewards of the fragments of beauty we find already in the world. It makes us want to help bring them into being where they're not yet established. Seeing something beautiful puts us in touch with the fragility and susceptibility of the world to injury. It motivates us to want to work towards the absence of injuring power from the world. So it has a sort of ethical alchemy. I think that's why I wrote my book, and I also think it's what we're doing here. So that's my thought for the day. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you, Alison. And yeah, just a reminder to people who haven't been able to get hold of a copy yet, I just popped up a slide with the book and also a discount code. Just before we move on to Jacob, I was going to ask Michael, just sorry to put you on the spot, but did you want to say a few words about beauty just after Alison? If you want to come off mute and say something. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you. I've known Alison Liebling for over 20 years. I first encountered her at an American Society of Criminology meeting in Chicago in 2005. And I read the abstract of her paper. I sat in the front row. And I was captivated by her humanity and her caring. And I have followed her work closely since that moment into prisons in America like Angola, the largest maximum security prison in the United States, and elsewhere. And I refer to Alison Liebling to my students as the prison whisperer, because she goes into prisons and figures out what's wrong and how we can treat people better. And the most brilliant thing about Alison's work, in my view, is that she highlights the utility of human kindness for even legal order, for the real project of justice, and how kindness and reciprocity and the I-thou relationship is really at the heart of what we're after. What are we after? Less crime, less victimization, wellness. And I referred the other day to Alison's work as a criminology of success. How do we order things in our own research to highlight where crime is low, what works, what's going on when people actually desist? And so I'm just privileged to be here, and I've told Alison it's a privilege to know her, and I was so happy to read her book ahead of time. And I felt the same thing that she felt at Angola, that when I first got to Angola in 2012, I was there, I worked there for 5 years. It's a brutal, historied prison. And I felt that it was beautiful when I first got there because they had planted a Christian seminary in the middle of America's largest maximum security prison. And there was a real ethos and expectation of kindness and care. And by the time I left, it had started to evaporate. And certainly it's not even present in other prisons I've worked in. So all to say, thank you, Alison, and thank you for having me, inviting me to say a few words.
Thank you so much, Michael.